I'm proud that I've got people here that deliver a level of service that gets remembered. Those of us that can deliver the successful outcome. Did you deliver it in a way which you left a positive, lasting impression on your client? Did they feel like they were being looked after? Did they feel like they had the best level of service they could get during that undertaking? That moment said to me, hey, Paul, your people are giving great levels of service.
Welcome to Long-Term Thinking for Business Success, a show for and by business owners. Each episode will explore how to beat the odds and create a sustainable business and the life we've dreamt of. Today's guest is Paul Webby, the Managing Director of Infrastructure Engineering Group, IEG. IEG is a specialist engineering firm focusing on utility infrastructure. Paul has over 20 years of experience in the service and infrastructure industry, with over 10 years spent working directly with many of Sydney's major electrical infrastructure companies. He has a chartership in electrical engineering and project management with Engineers Australia and is registered on the National Engineering Register. Paul has held many lead roles on significant federal and state projects and tenders, and is often asked to provide strategic advice and governance for these engagements. IEG is committed to innovative solutions and technical leadership in the infrastructure and utility sector. The team believes that the right people in the right positions are essential for achieving great results, and people are needed to deliver projects, and projects need leadership. Hi, Paul. Welcome to the Long-Term Thinking for Business Success podcast, and thanks for joining us.
Hey, Rick, thanks for having me on.
Before we dive into IEG, can we roll back the clock a little bit, and can you share your background, specifically your career as an employed engineer, and what motivated you to start your own businesses?
We got to roll the clock back to about 2013, perhaps 2014, when I was working for Ausgrid. And there was a time there where if you had another piece of employment, no matter what that was, you had to make an official declaration to make sure it wasn't a conflict. And it caught my attention. I thought, you know what, there's a lot that I wanted to try with design and modeling, and 3D modeling was becoming a real frontier at that stage. And I thought, I'm going to start my own business on the side, doing 3D modeling and design work. I thought, for that not to be a conflict of interest, we'll start out in the landscape space, in the landscape and urban environment. I put the paperwork in, it got signed off as a non-conflict, and I went about doing some 3D visualizations and 3D design. I really enjoyed the excitement of running my own business, the client engagement, seeing the outcomes, seeing how excited people were to see that 3D space coming to life. During 2014, I departed from working with Ausgrid and decided to transform that into a consulting business from there, and then went out as a consultant to the infrastructure industry. It was an important step for me to put my fingers into the space of running a business and understanding how to manage a small system at the stage, just how I was managing record keeping and engagement with clients, creating a brand, if you will. What was it like dealing with difficult customers, quoting the unknown, how to make sure a quote or engagement was well documented. There were no gaps in scope, and how to manage scope creeps. A lot of important lessons that were taken on board there before going out on my own as a contractor.
Would you class yourself as a accidental entrepreneur, or do you think it was something that was always in your passion? It's not uncommon, especially in professional services, that you go, I could do this on my own, and then suddenly there's a whole business and you're learning all the joys of setting up bookkeeping and invoicing and all that sort of thing.
Anyone that knows me who is listening to that would be laughing right now. I'm the kind of person that's always pushing a boundary. I love to push boundaries. I'm always looking at something going, can I do that? Is that something we could do? Is there some way to do that better? Business was a very natural transition for me.
How long did you have your first business for before you launched IEG?
I held that for a while. I was contracting in the infrastructure space as well. I only operated it as a true business for maybe about 6 to 9 months. Once I'd left Ausgrid, it translated into a consulting business, just again as a sole trader. I went back actually to work full time for some tier 1 consultancies after that. Very interestingly, when I worked for one of my favorite ones, I ended up building them a business of 35 strong in a particular discipline of utilities, and had many successful years there and made some great relationships. A few years on from that, I decided to go out and do it for myself. It was an opportunity to build a business within a business, if you will.
Just to explore IEG a little bit, what's the change that you want to make? Or to put that another way, what's the vision you're trying to deliver? And who are your ideal customers?
I really believe that we've got a very efficient and effective way of managing a very high risk process. I believe we bring clarity and a sense of certainty to the unknown, which is a huge piece in the utility space. We're really just trying to become a trusted advisor to our clients. We've achieved that. We've got so much repeat business, great clients where we've had feedback where I've heard people screaming in meetings, from now on, we're only using Paul, or let's not use those other guys again. We're only using ING. That's what we want. We want to be recognized as a leader in this space, but more importantly, we want to be trusted advisors. Clients that we're aiming for, quite selective, if you will. We don't have a particular ambition to be the biggest business or the largest company or sell ourselves in 3 years. We're quite happy to be successful as long as we're working with good clients. What are good clients? It comes down to culture and leadership. The culture that's reflected in the businesses of our clients is quite important because it means we can do a better job as well. And that's important.
It's critical. We talk a lot about an alignment of values, not just with a team, but with a client. And the moment there is a misalignment of values is where the relationship gets pushed pretty hard. Just to go a little bit deeper on when you're in front of a prospect, and specifically a prospect that you don't necessarily know well, how do you dig into that value equation or the value alignment?
It's not the biggest of industries here in Australia, the infrastructure space. There is a pretty good knowledge of who's who in the know at the large tier ones and tier twos, the government agencies. If we were to receive a proposal or a scope for a particular undertaking, and we could see that this particular client was not quite informed of what their true requirements were and so on, we could see this was going to be a really difficult job. That's when you want to know who the people are on the other side of the table so that when you have to realign or readjust scope, make sure that they get the outcomes they want. They're the kind of individuals in that leadership space that are going to sit down and actually listen rather than strictly adhere to a scope, which is going to lead them to failure ultimately.
We have the same challenge when clients are open to hearing us. We're not precious that they have to follow our advice, but we want to at least make sure that they've heard, understood, and considered it. Then we have a great alignment. The moment they say, no, just do this and don't want to listen, everything is much, much harder. Just to thinking back over the last few years of building IEG, I often find that business owners, we forget to celebrate our achievements and wins. When you're thinking about the success you've had at IEG, what are you most proud of and why?
We certainly haven't forgotten to celebrate. I've been amazed at what we've done because I didn't intend to be where I am today. There was a strategic roadmap that said in 2024, we're going to have a business of 10 plus. The proudest moments is when we get that feedback. I'll give you an example of a proud moment. I've got a fantastic team here and I've got Keating Zhao, who we've worked together before in 2 other tier 1 consultancies together. And he's absolutely fantastic. And he's our manager of engineering and design. We got a request for resources from a client, good client of ours recently. And they said, look, we need some help. Can you give us some names? Who's available? And I gave them 3 names and 3 CVs and got that over. And they responded immediately with, hi, thanks for that, but is Keating also available? But look, I didn't give you that. So we had a conversation. It was a very positive conversation about those 2 individuals that actually weren't even on the email. That's what I'm proud of. I'm proud of my team. I'm proud that I've got people here that deliver a level of service that gets remembered. Those of us that can deliver the successful outcome. Did you deliver it in a way which you left a positive, lasting impression on your client? Did they feel like they were being looked after? Did they feel like they had the best level of service they could get during that undertaking? That moment said to me, hey, Paul, your people are giving great levels of service.
We talk a lot about what would be a red carpet experience for our clients, would make them do exactly what you're saying, come back to us and say, that was fantastic. The way you've built your team and the way you deliver is remarkable and transformational. It's just an amazing feeling of pride when our team does that. Your role, at least on LinkedIn, is managing director, but that really doesn't tell us what you do. As always, in founder-led businesses, we're involved in many aspects of the business. Could you share what your top priorities are today and how you remain focused on them?
I go through phases of wearing different hats, as we can all imagine, from a client interfacing, business building, technical leadership, sometimes a little bit of CAD work when it's required.
That really is getting into the detail.
It is, but I'm currently engaged by one of my favorite tier one contractors, and I've been there for about 6 months. We're on a highways rollout. I'm engaged as one of the utility delivery lead, but I'm wearing a number of hats. But it's a great project with great people. But in that, I've got fingers in procurement, technical review, third party engagement, internal coordination, design markups, looking at constructability, looking at programs, so pretty much everything. And then I've got a whole business sitting in the background where I've got other clients calling me going, can you give me a fee proposal? Are you available in October for a tender we've got coming up? Are you keen of being part of a pursuit? We've got client meetings. We've got presentations getting done. We've got lunch and learn sessions. The first 6 months of this year has been ridiculously busy on a part that I've been quite busily engaged on a really amazing opportunity with a great client, but there's all this other stuff that sits in the background now. Not much of that changes throughout any given point in time. Some of our clients that we have specifically want me. They want me there, not because of the utilities engineering aspect, but from a level of experience and leadership. And there's the art of having to go and win work and build the client base and stay relevant in the industry as well. So at this stage with the business, I'm really trying to achieve some stability in my role. What role do I play in this business? Right now, I'm just trying to bring a bit of stability to it as we come to the 3-year mark in October. And that will be an incredible feeling for me, is to achieve that stability in my role.
It's a massive challenge. Rather than stability, we talk about sustainability. So how can we get the level of engagement in client work versus business work that we can continue to work? Because I expect, given the way you explained that answer, that a lot of your time is spent engaged with client and client as the business, and just finding that balance and how do we get to a level of it. It's not just throwing more hours at the day, which is probably what you do, that after a full day of work in the business, you then come home and try to do 5 minutes or 5 more hours of work on the business. How do you manage it? It's just more hours and weekends, or do you try to allocate hours every day or every week to be on the business?
It comes with the organic growth and how you feel your business is moving and how you review and monitor business. I noticed that I was getting too busy at one stage when it was just myself and 4 people in the business. We were on a number of jobs, but I was the lead on every single job. I started realizing for us to keep moving forward, I need someone to actually be the manager of this business, the manager of the engineering and design team. And for me to be a technical lead, perhaps on some jobs, or a governance position or a reviewer, but to then move into that more business and client space. That was a point where I knew I had to have a strategic hire. I knew there's a particular person that I needed to hire, and I knew who I really wanted for that role. I keep telling that person that I feel so lucky and blessed that he's happy to work here. I feel like most businesses need that. Get to a very critical point. It's a milestone. It's a key milestone you reach where you need to hire that person that you can trust unquestionably.
It sounds like he's a billable role as well. So you've just handed the problem of managing the business onto somebody who is just as busy.
You learn a lot of different tricks. You learn not to stress out. You learn that everything can change tomorrow. And there's no point stressing about. We all know these lessons. We hear them. People see them on their digital feeds, or they read them in a book or get taught them during some sort of lesson at work, or whatever. You can't worry about the things that are out of your control. Take on what you can control. Something I found myself saying so much in the last 2.5 years is everything can change tomorrow. And so many times it's been true. You're sitting there worrying and stressing about something, and then something amazing happens and the whole narrative changes 180 degrees the next morning because there's been an outcome or a decision made. All of a sudden, you've been carrying all this stress for nothing. There's an element of stress managing it. I think it's important to understand what you're going to allow to fail. It's an important lesson I learned when I started truly becoming a leader. One of my favorite bosses that I had said, you'll always be failing. You're always going to have some element of failure. If you think you're going to start the day with a to-do list, you're going to knock through it and it's all great, you're delusional. You'll start with 3 things that you want to get done. By lunchtime, you'll have 12 things. And by the end of the day, you're lucky if you've got one of those first 3 things done on your list. But that comes with being busy and successful. And it's really about understanding how and what you allow to fail and what's acceptable as failure and what you deem failure to be. And usually what you deem as failure is not really truly a failure. It's just what needs to happen. As long as you resurrect that thing the next day, or you can delegate it off the next day, unless you're prepared to let things fall out of your control realm, you are going to fail at business. Ultimately, you won't have a business. You'll drive yourself crazy.
We talk about having fewer things on the list and agreeing what you're not going to do. And that is more important than agreeing on what you're going to do, because that creates the space to do the other things. It's also a really good segue to my next question. You've alluded to it already, but despite all the careful planning we do for our businesses, unexpected things always happen. Again, looking back over the last few years, I'm curious to know if something caught you by surprise. And if so, how did you adjust your business strategy to leverage that and build success?
Question. There was a sudden demand for our services at a unique period in time. So it was a busy period. The business had gone through a good growth period. We grew from 2 staff members to 5, and we were invited to a tender. We were thinking, we're really busy, all these amazing opportunities. On that tender, we impressed the people around us so much that our client's client came over to us and said, we want to get you engaged directly with us on this same tender. We've talked to who you're engaged with under us now. That's not a conflict, but we need you to help us as well doing some stuff. So we ended up on one tender with 2 contracts. I remember saying, look, I'm not sure I've got enough people to give you what you need. And the response basically was, go find them.
If only it was so easy.
We managed. We did well. We ended up doing a really good job, and very proud of the team. It's one of those things where you learn how to knuckle down. And what it told us is it really showed me that the business is taking off and you need to have a flex strategy. When the demand spikes and it's urgent, because the demand doesn't give you warning. You just get a knock on the door and they say, we need you tomorrow. But when you get that knock on the door, do you have the capacity and the relationships to flex? And what I mean that is, who are your sub-consultants? Who are your part-time employees, your casuals? So we've actually got 2 casual employees. They're happy just to do their 9 to 5 in their other jobs. The digital engineering side of our business is not a conflict of interest. And we switch them on and off as needed, and they're happy with that. So that's a great little strategic plan there. And they're based here in Australia, so we didn't even have to offshore or anything like that. We've structured our business in a way that we've got our core business, but then we also have the capability to manage our resourcing and switch that on and off depending on those peaks.
It's an interesting consideration in the context of the next question. The role of trust and accountability is obviously critical, especially in a consulting firm like yours. And I love the positioning that I shared at the beginning, that IEG has the right people in the right position to achieve great things. In the context, especially if you mentioned that you've got a team of full-time all the way through to completely casual people, how do you go about building that trust and accountability so that people behave and live the values of IEG when you're not in the room and when they're off on projects?
We talk a lot about what we want IEG to stand for. When our client thinks of us, what do they expect? What do we want to be remembered for? What does your personal brand mean, let alone the brand of the business? And how are you going to operate so that the next time an opportunity comes up, the client says, oh, I want John or Mary or Susan. There's a huge cultural piece in there. What are the pillars that you found your business on? I constantly share stories from my past of when I've had to make difficult decisions, when certain behaviors have been displayed on projects. Whenever I'm in a senior role on a project and I experience challenging behaviors, I come back and confidentially share those stories with the team to show that I lead by example and how I dealt with those situations. They need to learn about them, understand that they are out there, so that they've got the confidence to know how to handle situations, or they understand how they're going to operate.
There's 2 things that I'd like to just explore a little bit further in that. I'm interested to understand at quite a tactical level where and when you talk about it. And the other one is the personal brand with staff and the role of personal brand versus IEG brand. Let's just step into first the conversations that you often have. So I'm assuming most of your team, they're engaged at client side as often as possible. Then you'd actually don't have as much opportunity to present your business to them and talk to them about it. Where do you find the time and the location to have these conversations about IEG brand and values and the positioning we're talking about?
I'm notorious for interrupting people in my business. And so you might not see me for a week, and then I'll strut through the office and I'll just be loud and annoying and talk to people and interrupt them and ask how they're going. I'm like a storm that comes through. And then I might take someone for a coffee. We go for one-on-ones and how you doing? What's happening? How have you been? What do you want to talk about? Anything? We do toolboxes. Keating runs a weekly startup meeting at the start of every week. Everyone gets together. Sometimes I drop in and I share a couple of stories of what's been happening. If it's a serious event, let's say there's been a very serious event that I've had to deal with a commercial issue or something, within taking specific details out of it and just sharing how I've handled the situation more than the detail of it, I'll make a point of sharing some specific detail about how I managed a very stressful situation for myself, techniques and so on. It's front of mind for us. We also have a knowledge sharing portal. If people have an experience or realize something or find something, they share it up there.
So part of it is ad hoc and part of it is in informal one-on-one meetings. And I imagine you have formal meetings as well, where you share the vision and the values and discuss it with people.
Yeah, we're also about to do a culture workshop. We're at that size in the business now where I've been a bit of a dictator in terms of what our culture is. We've got people here who've been here 2 years. I feel like they have ownership in this brand, and it's only therefore right that we hold a workshop to give everybody an opportunity to help us define what is our culture here at IAG.
Culture is a living thing that is driven by the team as much as us as owners want to say this is our culture. It's actually what people do day to day that drives the culture. So I agree. The other question that I was really interested in is the building of your team's personal brands versus IAG brand. Obviously, as a consulting company, you want people to ultimately knock on IAG's door, not even on your door per se, because if you're what they want, then that causes downstream problems. And the same thing with other staff members. How do you find that balance, especially within the client's mind, of trying to get them to understand the value of specific team members versus building IEG's brand and then wanting IEG, knowing that whoever it is going to be the expert that you want them to be?
How do you transform? We want Paul to, we want IAG, and then we want someone specific other than Paul from IAG. How do you disassociate Paul from IAG? It's been a huge challenge, but we've been achieving it. There's quite a lot of things that you have to do. There's a few things that come into play. Let's start with the personal brand thing. If you have employees, that's great, but how do they feel about themselves? Who do they think they are? And how would they explain who they are? If I met them at a party, or I met you at a party and I say, hey, what do? Do you just say, oh, I do design, or I'm an engineer? Or do you actually have an explanation of what you do? And do you say, I work in the infrastructure field, specializing in utilities, and I work for a specialist consultancy, we're about 10 strong. How do you identify yourself? What is your identity? And then how do you want to be remembered? How did you operate? How did you deliver information? How did you engage and interface with your clients and your other discipline leads or other co-workers around you? The experience matters. Everyone does it differently, and you've got to respect different personalities and traits, introverts, extroverts, and language barriers. We talk about all of these things. I think it's important with your employees to highlight the outstanding positive characteristics that they bring to the table. It's got to be stuff that's got nothing to do with their technical delivery and more about their attitude and personality. That's what we get remembered for. In terms of the brand piece, you've got to give your people an opportunity to be the face of your business. You've got to take trusted people and put them in positions where they will be relied upon and they will deliver, and you just disappear into the background and let them give your client the answer and give the excellence. And soon they will be remembered as, oh, that Ben guy, he was fantastic. They're great. He was always there. He responded. He went delivered. Really pleasant to deal with. That's the feedback we get with our staff. We're responsive, we're attentive, and we deliver. Sometimes when you can't deliver, it's really about making sure your client understands that why it will be delayed, or when it's going to be delivered, or why it's only partially delivered. One of the things I tell my staff is manage your client so that they are never surprised. We don't want to surprise clients. We want them to have a sense of certainty. So even if you only got 90% of something done, call them days ahead of the deliverable and tell them, hey, just letting you know, it's 90% there and the next day it'll be 100%. That's usually quite an acceptable thing. Just no surprises, and it's all about that experience.
That's great. We talk about marketing on the inside and making sure that the team understands both the value proposition and the values of the organization, and how do they personally live them and bring them out so that when they're in front of a client, they're delivering exactly as you say, the same value sets. And that's fundamentally what you're talking about. We suffer the same thing. The challenge is always getting them to separate the brand of inside out group versus the individual. And same thing with you, that you want them to love Ben, but you want them to love IEG a little bit more in case Ben's not available. They're still keen to have you guys, not to have Ben.
Yep, absolutely.
Just to go a completely different direction now. Growth in any business can fundamentally come from bringing in new clients or building better relationships with current clients, especially given that you're 3 years old and as you said, it's a small industry and you've got a fairly strong reputation in the industry. When you think about the growth of IEG, where do you focus on and why? Is it a focus on continually winning new clients, or is it much more around focusing on building deeper relationship with current clients?
It's definitely a mix of both. To sustain, you definitely need to be having a certain number of new clients per year, shall we say, or a target of some sort of new number of clients per year. And the simple reason is your favorite clients don't win all the jobs. Your favorite clients don't always need you. So you've got to continuously look for clients, but you've got to find a balance in, well, how hard will I look? What am I looking for? Is it the right time? Who's out there? There's a lot of factors to take into account. If you're not in touch, if you're not having the coffee, if you're not talking to people, and you don't go and talk to people because you want a job, you talk to people because you've got a network, genuine relationships that you maintain. It's through that constant connection that you actually find out, oh, so-and-so's moved from this company to that company. He's moved here, she's moved there, this person's been made redundant, this person started their own business. This is what gives you a bit of a mapping of who's who and where are they moving to. Sometimes it's not actually an organization that you may deem your client, a particular person within that organization. If that person moves, that means the client has moved and direction is moved. That's the new customer piece. Then you've got the existing customer piece. And you still have to maintain relationships. You can't just say, cool, we've done 12 jobs with that particular client now. They're a great client, tick, leave them alone. You've got to keep talking to them. There's restructuring, people move on. You need to stay relevant. You need to stay at the forefront of the conversation with them. Because it's not just about being in touch with that particular client, but understanding what they're looking at, understanding are they pivoting in the industry and why, and there's a huge picture that comes out in networking and genuine relationships. And the reason why I keep stressing genuine relationships, it's not worth being a salesperson just to win the jobs or find jobs. There's no point. I think as soon as you start sacrificing your ethics, your morality, and you start trying to just grow or win work for the sake of winning it and growing, you lose a certain level of the culture and your values. And we don't persist. If we feel like a particular avenue has gone cold, we just say, okay, that's what it is. It's not for us. Door is closed. It may open again in the future, but we're not going to be the salesperson you're relentlessly knocking. It all fundamentally comes down to relationships, being genuine, in my opinion, and then working out that balance of existing and future client.
That reminds me of a principle that drives a lot of what we do, that businesses don't buy anything. Businesses can't. People in businesses buy things, and people like to buy from people they like and trust. And it doesn't matter if they're in company A or company B, if they've got a solid, genuine relationship with you or with a colleague of yours, then they're likely to tap on their shoulder the next time they need that service, wherever they are. Just to do a bit of a hard left turn. And obviously you're a 3-year-old business. You've grown from really you as a consultant now, as you said, a 10 plus team. As an engineer, I'm sure you can appreciate that systems and processes are often critical to the success, especially a long-term and sustainable success for a business. As you've developed over the last 3 years, and as you think to the next 3 years, what is a system or process that you've implemented and created for your business? I'm not looking for a solution you've plugged into a client's problem. I'm really looking for something you've done in your business that's had a significant impact. And what impact was it that it created?
I'll share the mistake first.
Mistakes are wonderful.
On day one, I went with Google, the Google systems, and G Drive and all that sort of business. And quickly realized that actually everyone wants Microsoft. We got to pivot, go Microsoft, all Microsoft Teams, the whole lot. And it was a nightmare changing over. It really was. And I ended up having to get Microsoft Business on the hotline. We ended up getting that sorted, but it was an absolute nightmare. We've developed for ourselves is our internal web-based application, which is a project management tool. And it's a very comprehensive tool that allows you to issue a number of people tasks, subtasks, report on the progress of those tasks, put notes in there. And as people complete subtasks and tasks, it sends the PM a notification by email. And it does a whole lot more than that. It helps with resourcing and timelines. So we've got a way of managing people's workloads and tasks, and we understand where they are on project without having to go around and ask everybody every 5 minutes and tap them on the shoulder. So it's quite ominous. And then we moved to creating an integrated management system as well, and coming together on ideas on how we're going to undertake certain aspects of our work, no matter who's doing the job, that it's uniform. If client A has team A or B or C on it, it's the same delivery. It's the same quality. They are looking report. So it's about developing how you deliver your work consistently. So using your work methods. We really started developing who we are internally as a business, how we develop. And that's a team effort. It's something as you're growing and people are starting to ask you questions on how you do things. We started like a new starter onboarding pack, which is still currently being updated, but all of those things developed over time, that developed with the people that were growing with the business.
Thank you for that. And I expect as you grow, as is always the way, from one size to the next size, those systems and processes will break and you'll need to redo them again. Just to step back to the project management tool, I think you said that you built it yourself, or is it a customized off-the-shelf product? So if it is a built yourself, why did you go that road, not down the road of one of the gazillion project management systems that already exist?
Yeah, good question. So we've got a couple of good software engineers in the business. One of them's casual, the other one's an intern. We looked at different tools that we could use, and each one of those three main tools that we looked at, which were quite mainstream in the industry, had aspects of what didn't work for us. There were constraints across the field out of these three products that we weren't happy with. And so I turned to our young fellow and I said, look, could you build one of these? Could you build what they're all doing and what we want? We'll scope this out. Could you build it? And he just went, yeah. It's the way he said, yeah. It was just so casual. Yeah, I could build it. Yeah, I could throw a tennis ball down the hallway. And so I thought, okay, let's do this. And we had a time frame and we had some mentorship and input, and he's done a great job and he's built a really good tool. He's had input from everybody in the team. We've tested it, and yeah, it was fun. It was a great experience for everybody that was involved, and we've got something that is exactly what we want, which is best.
That's great. Congratulations. Again, just to go a different direction, thinking back over the life of your career, not just the 3 years or so building IEG, I often find the hardest lesson for me is one that I've had to relearn a few times or revisit a few times. Is there a hard lesson that you can think back to that you've had to learn and possibly relearn? And if so, how has that impacted the business?
Nothing that's impacted the business, shall I say. I've been very fortunate. We haven't had anything bad happen here. There's nothing disastrous. We haven't done anything wrong. We haven't failed anybody. We've only ever had good success. We all like to think we operate at our best every single day, but sometimes we don't. It's really about remembering, and it's easy to forget this, that whatever you say or do in front of your employees has an effect. What you comment on, how you comment on it, it has an impression. And some people that work with you, they may look up to you, they'll respect you and at different levels. It's a very interesting position as a leader. You have to be very mindful of your own behaviors. And sometimes I have walked away thinking, oh, I shouldn't have been so critical, or I shouldn't have been so quick to judge on something, or I shouldn't have maybe shared too much of something. Maybe sometimes people think, oh, I'm glad he's really open with us. I think it's something that's very important for anyone who's a leader, and founders of businesses or people who direct businesses are leaders. Or even if you're a technical leader within an organization as an employee, how you appear to others has an impact. And those others could be clients. More importantly, it's the ones that are around you every day, which are your employees or your co-workers.
That's a great insight that you were sharing. And often it can be the fact that we haven't commented or haven't responded or didn't spend enough time responding, that we thought it was something simple and somebody had poured their heart and soul into it. They walk away feeling like, oh, they don't care about what I've done. Such a hard balance to find.
Yeah.
A couple of last questions. A great strategy is focused, as I'm sure you can appreciate, on being the most impactful activity and letting go of the others. In our experience, a business at any point can really only effectively work on a finite number of key initiatives, typically 3 or 4. Can you talk about 1 or 2 of your current strategic initiatives? And really what I'm interested in is the decision process you use to determine what those initiatives are.
This crawls back into the software automation space where we're building our own platforms to help become more efficient with what we're doing. And we'll often have a strategy around building a couple of different tools for the business. And some of them become busy, we get distracted, we've got to put down that fun task or objective. And they say, look, it's not a must have, but it's a great to have. And all of a sudden there's a fire over here that we've got to put out. I find we're constantly picking up and putting down these objectives, but it's great when we finally get around to them, when we finish them, and then we can put them into play. In terms of strategies, a lot of our strategy has been around establishing and refining our internal structure. What I mean by internal structure, and this is what I think is important for some businesses to understand, is you don't just hire people and call it a day, is who are your capability leads? Or you've got a team manager under you, and who's the lead of a particular capability and what responsibilities do they hold? How do you make sure that they feel like they actually are a capability lead? And what strategies do you have in place to make sure that your clients in the industry know that, oh, they've got a capability lead. They're actually a business that has a dedication towards continuous improvement. And a lot of our strategy hasn't been specifically around external facing requirements about market and people and business. And it's been more about our internal resources, whether it's a capability or a person or a structure, and how we're setting ourselves up internally to be prepared for future growth or influxes of work. That's been our real strategic conversations that we've been having over the last year.
One final question. Bill Gates famously said we overestimate what we can accomplish in 1 year, but significantly underestimate what we can accomplish in 10 years. Start gazing into the future. Where do you see IEG in the next 5 years? And what are the key obstacles do you think you'll have to overcome to get there?
We are looking to diversify in our capabilities. What I mean by that is we're looking to the future, and the future is probably already here on our doorstep in terms of some of these things I'm going to mention. As a specialist engineering firm branch into the fields of enviro, sustainability, we're looking at decarbonization, carbon reporting. We're looking at environmental consulting. Those are the avenues that we're thinking about building out into in terms of consulting. And they're not new avenues. They're out there. They're already being done, but that's where we're thinking about pivoting to. You can plan for these things, and then you might see the market quieten down or drop away, and you just think to yourself, now's not the time to hit the button on this idea or this growth. And then the next year, the opportunity might come up. As you said, is what happens in 10 years, who knows? But we definitely are looking at diversifying. I think the challenge that we see is that how long will that take? And in that time period, are you going to be badged as, no, you're a utility consultants, that's what you do? And what will it take? What challenges lie on the road ahead to diversify a business? It might take that we need another director to come on board. It's a director of environmental, or there's a lot of different ways we can skin that cat. I think diversification rather than just sheer growth of numbers is something I'm interested in as an objective when it comes to a growth strategy for us.
And are there any key things that you think will prevent you from achieving a diversification? It might just be choosing which area to diversify in. That could be the biggest obstacle.
It's always going to come down to people, and it's going to come down to having that right person to lead that space.
Are you currently fishing around for people in different spaces to find that person?
Look, it's something I'm discussing openly with key people, and we've had a little bit of interest, and That's how I'd like to run it. Is I really want to find somebody who's passionate and wants to come on board and wants to take on the responsibility of growing something, what is excited about that. It's hard to find those people. Everybody wants to build a business, but how many people are really, I think it requires some passion.
I definitely do know. And that's a great place to leave it, because one of the things that inspired me when I was researching the business and preparing for this conversation, and we've discussed it a few times, is your position of finding the right people, putting them in the right position, and then you can achieve great things. And that comment about finding the right person to help you achieve your next phase of growth is exactly that. So thank you for sharing your insights and allowing us to dive into your experience and the growth at IAG. And I look forward to seeing what the next 3 to 5 years bring for you.
Thanks so much, Rick. It's been an absolute pleasure, and it's been a great opportunity to actually hear what I've been saying and reflect on my own words there, and some great challenging questions from yourself. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.